Hi guys, welcome to the unboxing and review for the FY-G3Ultral 3-axis handheld gimbal for the GoPro Hero 3 and Hero 3 Plus. This box has just arrived this morning. Ali at FayTech was kind enough to sell me kind of a pre-release version. The item itself is what will be released, but the box isn't, so they hadn't actually finished the packaging. I think that was due to arrive later on this week before they could start shipping to their distributors. So yeah, they sent me this one nice and early so I can do a couple of videos on it and see how it all works out. So like I say, this is the handheld version. First and foremost, let's just take a look at the 2-axis version. So this is the 2-axis version. This is sitting on my Icon A5 cockpit at the moment. Obviously I use this for radio control flight. This isn't the handheld rig, but the gimbal itself is what used to come with the handheld rig. Beefy motors, they were the main thing with the gimbal, and also, like this is mounted, you can mount it either upside down or the right way up. So perfect if you want to use for fixed wing like this, because it's sat upright, or obviously if you've got a multi-rotor it would tend to hang underneath it, so all you have to do is you just change the motor so it's that side and it would actually hang underneath the multi-rotor. Really solid motors on these, so you could put a lot of pressure, you could put ND filters on here without it even having a heartbeat. A lot more capabilities from that point of view than say the DJI Zenmoose, and this thing will stand up to the test against heavy winds as well. Anything over about 15 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour flying into the wind, this struggles a little bit, but it doesn't go completely glitchy. There have been some problems with firmware. There have been a bit of roll drift that's been noticed. But to be fair, to FayTech's credit, they often look at the forums, they listen to people's responses, reviews, and they fixed a lot of the bugs out of it. So it's actually turned out to be quite a nice gimbal. This one was like £130, so it was £100 less than DJI's one when DJI actually dropped the price. So it's still a very competitive gimbal. Anyway, that's the 2-axis version. So let's take a look at the 3-axis version on its handheld rig. So let's deal with the unboxing. As always, we get somewhat iffy English instruction manual. You get yourself a warranty card, you get yourself a battery charger. Now, notes about the battery charger. Number one, comes with a fixed 2-pin outlet. This particular box doesn't have the UK plug on it, so I'm going to have to get myself an adapter, which I'm sure I've got lying around somewhere. The gimbal itself uses 3 batteries, which you get 4. So you get a spare battery, but you can only charge 2 at a time, which is a bit of a strange one, but still, I mean, perfectly functional. There's a bit of charge in these batteries already, so I can give it a good test out later on today. But yeah, so that's the basics of that. You also get the standard FayTech brushed aluminium USB port here. That's for updating your firmware, which I'm sure there'll be plenty of updates coming, and that just plugs straight into the handheld mount, which is nice. You get your 4 batteries there, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are lithium ion, fairly unbranded. 16340 is written on the side of it, and 3.7 volts. Nothing too much to write there. I'm sure you can get some replacements if needed. Okay, and let's just pull the gimbal out of here. Now, like I say, just to reiterate, this is not the box that you're likely to get. You'll probably get one of their nice tin boxes, but still, this is what they've sent me. So let's look at the beastie itself. So we've got a nice brushed aluminium, very solid as always, good quality from FayTech, I found, from various different pieces of kit that I've got from them. Right, now immediately the things that I noticed as soon as I had a look at this, let's just put up a picture of the 2-axis version of the handheld rig now. Okay, so as we're looking at this, the things that you can notice is a pivot point. Right at the end by the gimbal, you can see that it can actually pivot and you can actually change it slightly. That isn't present if we come back. That isn't present on this one. This is a fixed hinge. Well, I say a fixed hinge, it's not even a hinge. It's literally a case of the motor, the 3rd-axis motor, bolts straight into it, so there is no pivot point on there. It's not going to be the end of the world, but it's a function that is, you know, it's a change from it. The other thing that's much more noticeable on this is a lack of buttons. Basically, you've got an on-off button here, that turns the power on, and then you've got a mode button here, and I'll go through the various modes, or as best I have translated them. in a moment. But the thing that you're going to notice is there are no tilt buttons. So the old 2-axis gimbal, what was very nice about it, and I'll just bring in the old one here, on the power board on the radio control versions, you had the ability to manually tilt with these two buttons here. So you could actually aim your camera down just by pressing those buttons up or down, and it would stay fixed. Obviously when you're using radio controlled, you're going to have it rigged up to your transmitter, and that's not necessarily a problem. However, it was really nice on the handheld rig because you would be able to do the tilting yourself. This one doesn't have that, so it's an interesting change that FAO have decided to go with that route. So this is very much fixed horizontal, so if you've got any wishes to actually tilt down at the moment as it stands, that's not going to happen. Whether or not this will work if I plug it into that board, we're going to find out later on. So subscribe to my channel and you'll see me probably taking this to pieces and doing all sorts of stuff that FairTech were never designing it to be done. But anyway, I'll stick to this for the moment. The other major change, which is a point of contention I guess with me, the nice thing that they've done is they've got rid of the Allen key screws into the mount. So let me again get the 2-axis version in. Okay, so as you can see, on the 2-axis version, what they did is they went the sort of the Taro gimbal route with this aluminium ring, but the frustrating part of it was there were two little 2.5mm, I think they were, or even less, Allen keys, and literally all that is just a bolt. Now that was a bit of a pig, because if you wanted to get your camera out every time, you've got to undo that, you've got to take them off, you've got to try not to lose them. And also I found that one of these, I had two of these gimbals, one of them, the threads on this were very weak and they ended up stripping really easily, which was a bit of a shame. Bit of a pain, but of course in flight it holds your camera very nicely. So moving back to this one, what they've done is they've decided to get rid of that ring altogether and they're just using a single bar. What they've done, which is very nice, is they've given some nice little thumb screws, which makes life a lot easier. The other way that they've changed it, if I just grab my other Hero 3 here, is to fit the gimbal. All you've got to do is loosen them off, and you just simply slide your camera in, and you tighten them up. Now, for a handheld rig, absolutely no problem whatsoever. It's going to stay stable whilst you're moving it around. It's not going to fall sideways anyway. No issue there. My slight concern is when you're flying it, if this is the same design as they decide to use on the one for flying, if they do make one, if you don't do these up tight enough, oh dear, bye bye. Like I say, it shouldn't happen. If the gimbal is operating, it should be holding it steady and it should be holding it in a fixed horizontal anyway. My worry is if it glitches out for whatever reason, you know, if you don't do it tight enough, it might fall out. Personally, I don't think it would, and I think you could probably just about get away with putting a rubber band or some bracket around here to prevent that from happening. If I pull that in tight enough, you see, that's just thumb screw tight. It's not really moving anywhere, so I don't know, maybe I'm over worrying about that, but it's an interesting design, shall we say. Probably a bit of cost saving has been done there, and they've obviously decided that it's okay, but just bear that in mind anyway. If you're doing some really heavy manoeuvres, you're going to need to tighten that down. But anyway, again, let's concentrate on this for a handheld rig rather than actually flying with it at the moment. So anyway, so that's the basic design of it. You've got a little status light here. The recent update on the firmware, you've also got one here, now actually gives you a battery level indication through these lights. They've done that on the 2-axis version as well, which I believe is probably because of these motors are the same. So each of these motors actually have a status light, and what they do is they flash a certain number of times depending on the amount of battery that you've got in it. So let's just very quickly put some batteries in here. There's enough charge in these to at least be able to test it. Okay. 1, 2, 3, and the base on there. Okay, so you see when I press that button, what you'll see, hopefully, here, there you go, blue light says it's initializing. I'll hold it upright so it can do it. 3, 2, 1. Oh, there we go. Right, so we're now initialized. Now obviously my camera is not in the right rotation right now for you to be able to see this, and obviously I'll do some more videos showing you what's going on here. So at the moment I've got this in mode 1. You can see that by this single flashing LED. There's 3 modes. Being completely honest, instruction manuals do not tell you what those modes are in a way that's very easily translated. As you can see here, if I move around, I can actually move the third axis, the pan axis, around. Now obviously that means that it's following my movements, but it's doing it nice and smoothly. So if I jolt my hand around, you can see it does actually respond to it, which is nice. If I pan forward, everything's staying nice and stable. So it's looking pretty good from a handheld point of view. In theory, if I press once, now I'm in that mode. Yep, so one press does that mode, which will allow me to pan around. If I double tap, now I'm in mode 2, which, being completely honest, I have, there we go, mode 2. Mode 2 will actually tilt the camera down, so it will allow you to look down. So I don't know, you probably can't see that very well, but if I'm now looking at the floor, it will let me look at the floor. It wouldn't let me do that in mode 1, it was always a fixed horizon. So that's quite nice. That's probably why they've decided not to bother with the tilt, because actually if you wanted, let's say you're just over a nice high bridge or something, you wanted to look over the top of it, you could slowly pan down, give you a nice smooth pan, and you could look down. And it's intelligent enough to know that. And then we've got mode 3, so if we hold this for more than 2 seconds, 1, 2, then you get a solid blue light, and that's now fixed. So wherever you were, everything's fixed in. So that is now not going to take its eye off anything that you were looking at before, no matter what you do, and it's holding very stable. So yeah, so anyway, obviously it's going to be much more interesting to have some footage of that, so I'll stop playing around for that now. All you got to do to turn it off, again, press the button on the bottom down here, one tap, boom, goes limp, job's a good one. So far that's looking pretty good. Obviously the proof will be in the pudding once I manage to get it out and do some testing. So yeah, but anyway, that's the initial part of it. So now let's move on to see some test footage, and we'll see how it performs actually out in the open field. So this is the test that I did. I chose to use a bicycle for this test, so we're going to have a head cam pointing at the actual gimbal, and we're also going to have the footage from the gimbal itself. So obviously not using an aircraft for this particular test, but I'm going to test all 3 modes and we'll see how each one happens, and I'll talk a little bit about each one. So for this initial test I'm using heading follow mode. That is FY-G's actual way of phrasing it from the manual. Heading follow mode, basically what that means is that the horizon is completely locked in. However, you can pan left and right. So as you can see here, I'm panning round right, just using my wrist to just turn it slightly. The more aggressive you turn your wrist, the faster the pan will go, but it won't always catch up completely. It's pretty responsive, but it means that you can just do a nice gentle pan around if you want to. Very good from the point of view of multi-rotors, so a nice yaw around here would give you a nice steady shot. As you can see, the horizon's pretty locked in. I was quite impressed with the horizon lock actually, because I've had problems with the 2-axis version with horizon lock, but they seem to be using a better firmware, or certainly the latest firmware that improved that. So as you can see, when you're playing around with the actual gimbal, you can raise it up, you can raise it down. This is pretty much acting like a 2-axis gimbal used to, but with the addition that you can actually pan around slightly and you're not restricted to a snap pan every time you do it. Okay, so now we're going to move into mode 2 with 2 taps just there. So mode 2 is heading and pitch follow mode. Now with mode 2, this now also gives you, as well as panning around, this now gives you the ability of tilting the camera forward. So as you can see here, if I actually apply pressure and push forward, it's going to tilt the camera down. So it's going to recognise the fact that I want to look down, and it's going to hold the camera nice and steady in place there. As we pull back up, it's going to recognise the pullback, and it's going to actually tilt it backwards. So as you can see, it's quite nice and steady at the moment. Again, the horizon's locked in very well. The roll is very good, even though we're on a bumpy surface. There's going to be some bumps on this, but I'm pretty impressed with it so far. We'll just take a little gentle tilt backwards, so I'm holding it back now, and it's recognised that I want to look up. Now using this on an aircraft will be a bit of an interesting one. At first I was wondering whether or not that's going to cause horrible results. I think the key to remember is that there's a delay. When I move my hand forward quickly, it will catch up, but it won't do it in a dramatic fashion. So let's take, for example, a fixed wing aircraft. Let's say we decided to do an ascent. As we pull up into that ascent, if we do it quickly, the camera's going to recognise that you're going up, but it's going to take a little bit of time before it decides actually, oh, he's looking up. Chances are by the time you've actually got to where you want to be, that's when it's going to have caught up. But you never know, it might be some interesting results. I'm looking forward to being able to test that out. Likewise with multi-rotors, of course, when you go forwards, there's a good chance that it's going to tilt. So now I'm just going to hold the button down for 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then come off it, and that's going to move us into mode number 3, locking mode. So all I've done there is I've pointed the camera pretty much at the end of the road, and now what it's going to do is it's going to keep the camera fixed on that point. So no matter what I do, whether I try and pan around, whether I try and tilt forward, that is going to be a fixed reference point now. If I were to try and pan around too far, what's going to happen is it's going to hit the buffer, and then it will start glitching out, because basically its IMU is trying to keep that camera in as steady a position as possible. You can notice there's a little bit more bumps in this video, and that's because at moments I am actually catching some of the locking points on the actual constraints of the handheld device, but that's going to be expected. Locking mode, again, if you're going to use that in radio control flight, would be an interesting one if you've got capabilities of flicking it into that mode via your transmitter. It's going to give you a nice steady shot, so if you just point down at a fixed place and then you aim for it, I think you're going to get a really nice steady shot for it. But again, it'll be interesting to test that out. Certainly from what I can see of it so far anyway, even with version number 1 of the firmware and version number 1 of the motors, out of the box, this is a really nice capable handheld gimbal. So with a few pictures going in the background, let's draw some conclusions. As a handheld rig, I think for the money, this is an excellent piece of kit. It's responding well, the motors are working, the firmware is looking good at the moment. Certainly using it in my hand, I feel that this is really good. It's not a professional piece of kit, but it's not priced at a professional point of view. It's using a Hero 3, it's not going to be top grade camera, but you get a really nice result for what you've actually got. It's well made, you can charge it up, you can just stick it in a bag. It's fantastic from that side of things. I'm obviously looking at it in more of a radio control point of view, as I'm sure many of the people who are watching this video right now will be thinking. Personally, I think it's going to be very good. The question mark really is it going to be better than its main competitor, which is going to be the DJI H3 3D? For my money, unlikely. From my experience of the way that the DJI gimbals work, they tap into the IMU of the NASA itself. They've got a little bit more warning, therefore, of when a movement is going to happen, and for that reason they can really lock into that horizon. That said, this particular gimbal so far, from the small amount of testing that I've done, seems to have a very good horizon lock, somewhat better in fact than its little brother, the 2-axis version. So I think there is some potential that this could be a really good flight gimbal. The other question mark, of course, is the modes, whether or not they're going to work for radio control flight. But the good thing with that is I know for a fact that Fairtech will listen to people on the forums. They'll adjust, they'll tweak, they'll do basically what is required to make this product work for people who want to fly it. The other great thing is that you can mount this to pretty much anything. The mounting points they're very good. We're talking a couple of screws, and as long as the power board that they come out with is going to be fairly versatile, it's going to be a lot easier to mount than something like the DJI model, because you don't have to have a GCU unit or anything like that. So all in all, I think excellent value for money and highly recommended at the moment. Follow my blog and we'll take a look at how it develops.